We're going to finish chapter 4 of 1 John this morning. We're looking at verses 19 through 21. 1 John chapter 4, verses 19 through 21. This is what God's word says. We love because he first loved us. If anyone says, I love God, and hates his brother, he is a liar. For he who does not love his brother whom he has seen cannot love God whom he has not seen. And this commandment we have from him: whoever loves God must also love his brother. You may be seated. As we've been going through chapter 4, we notice that John has been focusing on the topic of love, especially in love within the church of God. And I want to just spend a couple minutes talking about what true love looks like as using biblical definition and why it always involves sacrifice. I want to talk about why loving other Christians is a fundamental duty for every believer. So if we look back just a chapter before in 1 John 3, John, he defines love for us. He says in verse 16 of chapter 3, we know love by this, that he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brethren. Now, this shows that love, it requires sacrifice. When we read this definition of love, and we also see this other places like in the gospel and throughout the scriptures. If we continue reading to verse 17, John, he's going to get even more specific about what love looks like in action. So in verse 17 of chapter 3, he says, but whoever has the world's goods and he sees his brother in need, but he closes his heart against him, how does the love of God abide in him? So John, right here, he's getting more focused on what love looks like to one another. Refusing to meet the needs of other Christians when you have the means and the opportunity to do so, well, that raises serious doubt about your love for God. And over again, John is going to challenge this idea of a privatized faith, a faith that doesn't, it only talks the talk, it doesn't walk the walk either. And he challenges this privatized faith, this one that only confesses love but doesn't act or walk in love. Here at Christ Redeemer, we would call this a Gnostic faith that John is against. And then he's going to do it here again in verse 20 of chapter 4 when he shows the ridiculous logic of a Christian who thinks he can say he loves God and yet he doesn't show love to his brother. He also shows why when a Christian consistently resists meeting the needs of loving another Christian who he sees at least once a week, and why that cannot be compatible with saying that you love God. And according to John, the only thing worse than being a Gnostic, is being a lying Gnostic. He calls anyone who practices this a liar. And when we read the Bible, it's going to continue to talk about genuine self-sacrificing love that meets the needs of others. And when we think about what does this look like in my life? What does this look like for me on a daily basis? Well, this plays out in many ways, various ways. It's not just about giving material resources like money, although it definitely can be that. It can also be giving up your time. When we think about what needs do the people of God have who are right in front of us, what needs can I meet specifically for my brother or sister? Well, that's your answer. That is your opportunity to love someone. And as we challenge ourselves to love sacrificially, let us remember the words of the Apostle Paul in Galatians 6, verses 9 through 10. I think these words are encouraging for us as we consider this commandment. He says, let us not lose heart in doing good, for in due time we will reap if we do not grow weary. So then, while we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, and especially to those who are in the household of the faith. Now, I believe there's a lot of love in this room, so I would encourage us to let that love overflow for our fellow saints. Church, lift up your hearts.